Hello, and welcome to the Cavalier Family Show. Uh, as you already know, we are an independent studio, and on the show, we'll be discussing life entertainment from the big screen movies down to our favorite independent films, TV shows, cartoons, and video games. However, first off, we would like to thank Kevin Holmes, who has designed our intro and outro video, along with Justin Dye, who's created many of the musical elements for us, not just here, but with the a lot of the videos that we've had that we've uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. Just a couple of updates. We are looks to be postponing, unfortunately, the video that we have projected to shoot on October 3rd. And other than that, we are going forward, of course, with other things as well. And other scripted too. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's start the show. As you can see, Lee is not with us this week. He's actually on vacation. The lucky guy he is. He went out camping with his family. So, thoughts and prayers and love for his family out that way. However, as you do see, we do have a special guest on the show today, and it's none other than our family member itself, Justin Dye. Justin, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Now that that fantastic song just played.
Yes, and exactly as that intro relates, that is actually Justin Dye's music specifically. And in today's show, Justin will, of course, be participating in our little thing when we go back in time to 1996. But most importantly, of course, today is all about, first half of the show is about Justin himself. And of course, a lot of you don't know Justin. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Justin letting us know a little bit, about himself and his journey before Cavalier. So Justin, go ahead and take it away, my friend.
Awesome, thank you. So as you stated, my name is Justin Dye. I go by the moniker To the Stars We Return. And basically what I do is I'm a music composer. First and foremost, I make my own albums. I've been a singer-songwriter for many, many years, acoustic guitar, kind of John Mayer type stuff early on, Goo Goo Dolls, all that kind of classic 90s rock, Toad the Wet Sprocket, all that. Over the years, my style's kind of changed a little bit. I'm an 80s baby, so I was born in 1982. I grew up with classics like Tears for Fears and Depeche Mode and Hall & Oates and all that. So I started kind of getting more into that sort of stuff with my music. So there's a brand new kind of music out. It's been around for a little while, but it's just slowly starting to kind of catch on and blow up. It's called synthwave music, which is basically taking all the great stuff from the 80s, like the 80s pop music, and kind of getting that nostalgia feeling going on, and putting it into something a little brand new. So I'm kind of delving a little bit into that while also making it my own kind of thing. I'm very, very heavily influenced in soundtracks as well. So, John Williams, composer, Hans Zimmer, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I'm kind of marrying the two together with my music right now for my own kind of album. So a little bit later, we're going to be talking about album release and, a little sneak peek of a new song, which is going to be really cool. But I also like to compose music as well for things like this, like podcasts. I've done some YouTuber intros, background music, and I'm also working on something down in Orlando right now for a haunted attraction for this Halloween season with Arrowwood. A good friend of mine, Timmy Williams, asked me to do the soundtrack for that haunted walkthrough. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. It's all finished, and we're going to be announcing some of that stuff tomorrow. So
that's awesome. Now, I did notice, though, you said Hans Zimmerman, right? And you mentioned another, but you didn't mention Danny Elfman. Are you a fan of Danny Elfman or no?
On and off. On and off, man. Like early Danny Elfman's great. And then I for me personally, I feel like he just kind of started. You can always tell it's Danny Elfman. Like John Williams, you can go through like a bunch of different movies of his, and like he has his flair, but it's not the same kind of circus music kind of sound, in every kind of soundtrack. So I do respect Danny Elfman, and I listen to Oingo Boingo and stuff like that from back in the 80s. And he's got a new album out yet. I don't know if you heard anything from it, but it's bizarre.
It's weird. It's really weird. Yeah, I saw like a couple of posts because I follow him on like Facebook and social media and stuff, and he did his own work, like his own composing. And did he do his own singing too?
Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of hear Jack Skellington in a bunch of those songs, but it's like Jack Skellington cursing and talking about drugs, so it's really off-putting.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that a lot of people don't know is that when it comes to Nightmare Before Christmas, is he did the music, but a different person actually voiced the character himself, because the voice of the character, he couldn't sing, so that's when Danny Elfman was like, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then that's how we get the Jack singing voice, which is awesome.
Yeah, I also didn't realize until recently that I think it was Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride that did the voice for Jack Skellington.
Really?
Yeah, did not know that. But I watched that Movies That Made Us on Netflix, and they were talking about that. And and also Danny Elfman actually composed all the music before any scenes were even filmed on that. He said as soon as he got the job for it, he wrote everything in a couple of days, and then they built the movie around the songs that he came up with.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So to move along, of course, now a lot of people are kind of asking, how did we meet? Well, I actually met Justin through a mutual friend of Mark. I'll go ahead and leave his last name out just because of privacy. I don't know if he wants his last name to be shared or not. But Mark and I actually know each other from my time, of course, with Disney, and his time with Disney as well, and working, attractions and stuff. And Justin's actually been on the team since June. And as stated before, I mean, you've been one of the key components to a lot of the music that we've had, just like the intro music, a lot of the music that you'll see going forward, just a lot of musical content in general. And of course, going forward, you'll be part of some of the music that we'll have for the commercial. Another one of our short films that we'll be having that I wrote specifically called Chips, where it takes place with two friends in a bar. And then, of course, with the horror version too. The script that I'll be working on as well, that hopefully will be, filming too. But I mean, you spoke about your creativity as far as the 80s and inspiration with that. And of course, I grew up and I was born in the late 80s, so I can, of course, understand some of that, like Hall & Oates, and then a lot of The Journey is another one, Def Leppard, AC/DC, just a lot of those guys specifically. But what exactly drives your creativity, though? Because that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people knows about a lot of the artists, is the drive of the creativity. And you mentioned some musical artists that, are inspirations, but do you have like any specific musical artists in general?
I do. I have two, and this makes me sound very pretentious, but they're two very not well-known artists at all. And it's not, I don't love them because they're not well known. It's just I love them and realize that they're not well known when they absolutely should be well known. The first one is a Canadian artist named Neverending White Lights, and he has a project more than a band. It's basically himself. He writes everything in on the albums, plays every single instrument on the album, and then he'll get different people to sing on each track. He will kind of like lay it out and say like, hey, I want, this person from Our Lady Peace to sing on a track, and I want this person from 311 to sing on this track. And he goes through like all these different artists. And the cool thing about it is it's the type of music that you would never normally hear these other artists sing on. It's very orchestral, it's very cinematic, it's very beautiful, deep music. And so with the album that I'm working on now, it is 100% recorded. It's just being mixed and mastered right now. But the cinematic and orchestral aspect of that is kind of comes from my love of Neverending White Lights, but also a lot of theater and movies. The other artist that is a huge influence on me is on the synthwave side of things. is a guy that goes by the name of By an Ion, Byanion, By an Ion. And it's along the lines of Neverending White Lights with like the orchestral kind of ethereal kind of sound, but it brings in a little bit more of that 80s element to it. And it's kind of emotional music. If you ever listen to the artist that I really love, you'd kind of think I'm an emo kid, but I'm actually a really, really happy person. But I just like emotional, deep stuff. And that's kind of where I draw my influences from. Mainly would be those two artists that when I set forth to put this album out, I was listening to a lot of that kind of stuff. I highly recommend that.
Well, the beauty of the fact of like, going with emotions and stuff is the beauty of music in general. And the one thing that I've heard from some of your stuff is the fact that you let your emotions and storytelling lay on the actual music itself. And like, of course, we'll go more into the album soon, but like you tell your own story, and that's the whole thing with music, is whether if it's lyrics or just instrumental, is you can feel the emotion to it, you can feel the vibration of whether it be strings, brass, woodwind, it doesn't matter, like you can feel the emotion that the people are leaving, and that's what music is all about.
Yep. And that was the challenge with this album, was kind of, this is my first album that I've ever put out under the moniker To the Stars We Return. And I wanted to do something different than what I normally do. And the challenge for this album is it's 100% instrumental and there's no vocals. So the challenge was presented on how to get across certain emotions in songs. And because it's a concept album. And when I tell somebody it's a concept album and it doesn't have any lyrics, they're like, what? How's that work? But there's a huge plan for this album. I'm going to have short stories to go along with each song. So when somebody's listening to the album for the first time, they're going to be able to read a short story that goes along with each song and kind of get more emotion from it as well by kind of really delving deeper into what the song is about. So it's going to have this kind of fourth dimensional kind of interaction with it, instead of just listening to a song.
And that's actually surprising and amazing all on its own, just because of the fact that, when you're younger, right, during our time period, we had tapes that we would like listen to, and it would read you the story. It would read you the book. Like, for example, I had Go Dogs Go. But what you're doing is similar but completely different at the same time. Like, your music itself, it's trying to grasp the emotion, and with that storytelling, it gives the audience the ability to read your story and picture it in their own mind. So not only do they have like a book, like a Stephen King book or like a J.K. Rowling book or some of the other books that are out there, you're actually giving that plus more, something that's, from my experience, I've never actually experienced before, that I've never actually seen done before. Like, yeah, you can have musical like notations like in the back of the cassette or on the CD where it says composed by or lyrics by, but you're doing something different where you're actually telling a story on top of the music. So that's completely unique, and that's on its own just amazing feat itself.
Yeah, and to kind of circle back on what you were saying with, the thing that would like tell you the stories on my cassette, I just envision, and I really want to do this now, is I want to release a limited edition Teddy Ruxpin with my album. And just have him play the whole thing with the soundtrack going and reading the story. I think that'd be kind of badass.
Hey, I mean, if you can dream it, you can do it. And then if you can do that, I mean, you never know what happens if you can actually create your own spaceman, right? Hear me out. Your own toy space guy that comes with the actual album itself. Instead of a Teddy Ruxpin, you can have him tell the story because it goes along with the album.
I dig it. Just like a little mechanical robot dude.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
an astronaut. And go along with the theming. That'd be great. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I really wanted to mesh like my two loves together, which is storytelling and music, and kind of put it out there into one kind of brand new package. I set this album on the path of doing something where I wanted to try to do something that I always wanted to listen to personally or experience personally as an artist that another artist hasn't done yet. So first and foremost, as selfish as it sounds, this album is for myself. Anyone that digs it past me is, fantastic. If anybody listens to it and they connect with it, then job accomplished. But for me, first and foremost, it's an album I've always wanted to listen to that another artist has never done before. That's not to say that, you're going to hear songs on there that are going to blow you away that you've never heard before. And it's a brand new, concoction of something that's brand new. But it's a mixture of my influences and putting myself into it as well. Meanwhile, putting out this, story to go along with it.
And how long did it take you to do this?
I've had the idea for about a year, and I've been making demos all year long. Started with the pandemic. Me, along with, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of other people were furloughed from work for about 9 months here. And I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to sit still and feel like I'm not doing anything with my life. So when I was furloughed, I was getting a little bit sullen and downtrodden, depressed. And I was trying to think of something to do. So I started working on another singer-songwriter album. And about halfway through it, I was just not feeling it. I started writing about the world around me. I was writing about all the political stuff going on. I was writing about, the situation where we're all locked up and how we're feeling in isolation. And it got to a point where I thought to myself, like, I guarantee you there's like hundreds upon hundreds of other artists that are doing the exact same damn album as me right now. So I just wasn't feeling it. And I scrapped it. I put my guitar away. And I didn't have any other kind of instrumentation at the time other than my guitar, my microphone, and, a little recording studio I had set up in my apartment. And I knew I wanted to get into, the synthwave scene and try something a little bit different than what I'm comfortable with. And I never had the chance to do it before. So I was trying to think of how am I going to do this when I'm furloughed from work? I'm not getting a steady paycheck other than unemployment. And so how am I going to create this? So I released 3 demos, and it was a contained story within itself. It was a trilogy. And basically it was about the simulation theory, which we could probably get into in an episode all on its own about simulation theory and things like that. But it was about, kind of like the Matrix, waking up and realizing you're in a simulation. And it was following a character going through that and awakening and realizing and trying to, break out and get into the real world. And each album was like a continuation from that story. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end, but they were all demos. And I recorded it 100% on my iPhone on GarageBand. I'm talking keyboards, guitar, bass, drums. And drums, I had to sit there with my phone like this big and like kind of try and like drum with my fingertips. And it was such a challenge. And then I had to sing on my phone as well. Like I had nothing except my phone to get this album out because I couldn't afford a keyboard. I couldn't afford all the great equipment and things like that at the time because I was jobless. So yeah, I made it work, man. I made 3 albums worth of music on my GarageBand on my iPhone. And it turned out like really good, like for what it is. Like I always tell people, like it's good for what it is. There's always that comma in there. It's not quality. It's nothing like this album that I'm putting out now. End of the story, happy ending. I got my job back. I'm nice and happy now. I'm getting paid again. And I got a really nice keyboard and a computer and a setup finally. So I caught up with all that. So to answer your question in a very roundabout, long way, it took me about, I would say 6 months of recording for this particular album. And now we're in the mixing and mastering stage. And that's going to take a couple of months as well.
I mean, everything that's great comes into kind of takes a little bit longer, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it's for me. I learned the hard way with that. I used to record music and put out albums in like a week, and all my friends around me that are musicians are like, "Man, slow down." Like, I always get so excited to like I create something, and I want to like blast it out into the world, and just be like, "Look what I made! Look what I made!" And I get too excited, and it's not like what it could be if I just took my time and slowed down and made it better. So this time I promised myself right from the beginning that I was going to take my time and I was going to record and keep adding until I was completely happy with it. And that took some extra time, but I'm sitting here very happy with it. So
well, that's good. And from what I've heard, it sounds amazing, first off.
thanks.
And I completely understand that aspect too of like, wanting to do that. Like, I mean, coming from wanting to be like an independent director and like starting the business and stuff like that, like I just want to pop as many things out as possible because you want to get people interested, you want to get that flow going, but at the same time though is you want to be able to have people to actually listen to it and actually love I mean, for a perfect example, and this is no diss on her at all, but Lady Gaga, for an example, like she came out with an album and then the next year she came out with another album and then the next year she came out with the other album. It's like top of the charts, left and right, boom 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 boom. Like, don't get me wrong, Lady Gaga can sing, she's a great artist, but
Absolutely.
to me it didn't give me enough time to actually listen to everything that she provided and actually resonate. Like for an example, like Eminem, like I'm a huge Eminem fan. Now with that too is I know he's very controversial at that same time, but like between what was it, Encore, which was actually I think his greatest hits. So there's the Eminem show and the one that he had after that, and then he had Relapse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look how big that album was, and he even said that it wasn't that good. But at the same time, though, it's like I completely understand what you're saying. Like, you want to make sure that it's good and you want to get everything to the T. And from what I've heard, again, it's absolutely amazing.
Thanks, man.
And like, I am looking forward to actually being able to sit down and be with my daughter and actually, read that and listen to that, because even right now she'll be in the car and she'll hear like, like on the way to daycare this morning, she was listening to Danze Kuduro by Don Omar. A lot of people know that from the Fast and the Furious, and she was dancing to it. So I'm looking forward to actually sitting down with her, like reading this and then listening to your album and see like how she interacts, just because of the fact that, that's the beauty of music, right? It touches people differently.
Yeah.
And what you have is completely different, which is absolutely amazing. And you want that because that sets you apart of amazingness from everyone else and gets you known for what you do, what you love, and your musical talent as well.
I appreciate the kind words, man. It's everybody's got their thing, like they've got their shtick in music, and everyone's trying to come out with something new. But the story for me that goes along with it is something where, of course, like I wanted to grab people's attention, and I wanted it to be something where somebody's like, oh, cool, this guy's doing something totally different than what another person's doing. But at the same time, it's like the more I started recording it, the more it had to have like this story be told with it. And so, and it's weird to me too, like now having that story in my head of how it's all going to play out, and going back and listening to all the songs. So I recorded all the tracks and I named all the tracks before I even knew there was going to be a story to go along with it. And now like every single track title makes sense to the story. And I didn't even like connect those two on purpose. I just came up with the concept. I was like, man, the sounds that I'm hearing in these songs sound like this story about, and then, I started coming up with the ideas of the album, which I won't get into too much detail because I want surprises to happen. But basically, long and short of it, it's about an astronaut or a team of astronauts that go up into space, and they're looking for new planets that we can move to if our planet ever dies. And a disaster happens in space. Spaceship blows up, all but one dies. The one gets in an escape pod and bolts out. The rest of his crew dies, and then he is sucked into another universe and has no idea how to get home to his family. So the album's called Lonely Astronaut, and it's basically following this astronaut and his journey on trying to get back home. So
well, that sounds, well, again, from what I've heard, it's amazing, and I can't wait for other people to listen to it too. And then you also actually sent me a little surprise too that will get a little bit of a tease to what to expect, right?
Yeah. So I brought a teaser for the album itself. I figured since this was almost like as I have always called it, it's a soundtrack to a movie that doesn't exist. So this is the trailer to the soundtrack to the movie that doesn't exist.
All right. Well, hey, I like that. Let's go ahead and play it now.
Golf clap.
That's absolutely amazing. I am super excited about that. And I mean, when does it come out?
So yeah, I've been teasing that on all my social media platforms for quite a while. And I promised that this podcast here would be the very first time I announce it. So the album will officially be released on November 12th of this year. So it's coming up real soon. And right now it's in the mixing mastering stages. And it's being mixed and mastered by a fantastic duo. I've been recently signed to Synthetics Records, which is a sub-label of Retro Synth Records. Two really, really awesome guys. They have their own synthwave group called Neutron Dreams, and they are in the midst of putting out a new album as well that comes out about a month before mine. And they're kind of, bless them, they're working on that album at the same time they're working on my album. And so they're like, they've got their hands full with mixing and mastering right now. And I feel so bad because I'm just like checking in with them every day. Like, hey, we got a song that I can hear. How's it going? Do you need anything from me? And I'm just like so excited to, get something in my ears so I can take a listen to it. And what I've heard so far from what they're working on sounds absolutely amazing. And they've been absolutely incredible. So, and their stuff's really good too. If anybody wants to check them out, they're a couple of really cool guys. And, they are the kind of label as well that kind of lets you do you. The first thing that Dan from the label said to me was, we want you to be able to be yourself as an artist. And the only thing we ask is you put out something once a year, if that's an album, a song, an EP, anything, once a year, that's all we ask. And what you release is up to you. And we just ask that it's 100% you. And that coming from a label is pretty awesome. So yeah, I feel pretty lucky to be part of their team. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, it sounds like those are some great individuals to work with, to be partnered with, and they really love their artists. Just like, how many other people can actually say that? Like,
not many.
Exactly. Like, you hear so much, or so many people actually talk about, their album creators and their distributors, and how many challenges that they have. And and out and changes to their actual album versus what they actually wanted to create. So that's amazing to know that, they're for you. They are there for you in your musical dream.
It's a nice change of pace, man, because distribution-wise, it's a totally different story. Again, this could be a totally different podcast episode. I could go on and on and on about. But as an artist, I would always say that the best thing that you could possibly do for an artist that's not hitting millions of streams on Spotify and Apple Music and things like that is to listen to that artist on Bandcamp. because on Bandcamp, the artist and the label get a much bigger cut and than say your Spotify's and Apple Music, because not a lot of people realize that. I'm not taking away from Spotify or Apple Music. They're both great and they get you exposure, which is, ultimately what you want. But the breakdowns of like streaming and stuff like that, I made 14 cents in my first 3 months on all streaming platforms, which is absolutely crazy. So Bandcamp's always the way to go to kind of help like any kind of independent artist that you support, because you kind of get a little bit more from it.
And that's good too. And it's good that you actually brought that up, because I wanted to bring up the fact that, the best way to support this show, Cavalier Family, is to, of course, follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and all of the social media networks, mainly because of the fact that, we are an independent studio and we are trying to make our independent film. We did have a few things on Indiegogo and Kickstarter to do some crowdfunding. Hopefully we'll be able to get our GoFundMe up as soon as possible. We have some shirts designed as well. But most importantly, the reason why I bring that up is because the Bandcamp, the link to Justin's Bandcamp is actually part of the description in this link. So go ahead and click on that link, go to his Bandcamp, show him support, because he's not only helping us, but like he has his own thing that he's doing. And, we need to share love with him too, and being able to show the support. So please click that link. It's in the description. And of course, we cannot wait to hear the whole entire album to its entirety. Listen to that book with my daughter. Read that book while listening to the music with my daughter. And yeah, man, I'm very excited to hear all about your journey, and I know that a lot of people are really excited to hear about your journey too, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, that's not the end of the show, because just as promised as last week, I brought up the fact of, Malignant, the new movie by James Wan. And the reason why I bring that up is because I know Justin saw it, and him and I both have strong feelings. So, of course, to kind of segue to our next transition, we'll go ahead and use this. Justin, how did you feel about it? As far as James Wan goes, yeah, he's made Aquaman. He's done Fast and Furious movies, but he's mostly based on horror genres, like Saw, Conjuring. But this is different.
Yeah. Let me take my glasses off for this one. I don't know, man. I've been sitting on this one for about 2 weeks now. I thought maybe after some time I'd have some time to think about it and maybe change my mind about it. But I have very strong feelings about it. You're correct. I hate it. I hated every moment of that movie. To break it down for you a little bit, I would have enjoyed it if it took what it wanted to be and stuck with that the entire movie. So if you want it to be like a horror movie that is silly, then it should have been a horror movie that is silly all the way through. Kind of like Evil Dead 2, right? There is a silly horror movie. Yeah. Or even Army of Darkness, the third one. Yep. Same thing. It's what you're going in for. It was marketed as a silly horror movie, and it's a silly horror movie. It was from the credits all the way to the end credits. Where this one, it was it started out kind of hokey and campy at the very beginning, with a lot of the script. I was kind of oh, that's kind of cringe. And the acting itself was just kind of something seems kind of off about it. Then it got really serious all of a sudden, and there was some beautiful camera shots, a lot of those above camera shots where it's almost like a mouse maze, almost following the main character through it. Then it got really serious, and I kind of started leaning in again. And I'm like, okay, they've got my attention. This is kind of getting good. And then the twist happened, and then I laughed hysterically for 10 minutes straight. And then it turned into John Wick all of a sudden. And then the credits rolled. And I'm like, what? What just happened here? So it was there was just too much. It was almost like he, had a dartboard, and he's just had all these ideas, and he's just throwing them at it. And he's like, that sounds good. That sounds great. We'll do that. I want to check it. And I've read interviews with him where he was he was stating what he wanted it to be like. And he was talking about like the campy older 80s movies and stuff like that. Anybody that knows me, that's right up my freaking alley. Anything that's like, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street or a Friday the 13th kind of thing. Again, campy, still scary. You know what you're getting. But the early previews of this movie kind of sold it as like another James Wan classic, like a Conjuring or a Insidious. And I'm a huge fan of the Insidious. Yes. 1 and 2 anyway. 1 and 2 I really enjoyed. Conjuring, I like them, but not as much as the Insidious. I prefer Insidious. So I was kind of hoping, like, based on the previews, it was going to be along the lines of that. And then it just, like, became this off-the-wall, zany kind of... I was waiting for Benny Hill music to play.
See, like, the thing is with that movie, I'll agree with you in some circumstances. Like, the whole factor of the movie didn't know what it wanted to be. Because just like what you said, like, I've only seen one preview, first of all. I've only seen one trailer for this movie. And it sold it like an Insidious or Conjuring. Now, The only thing that I will disagree is I like Conjuring a little bit more than Insidious, just because Conjuring is based on a true story. And a lot of people know, not a lot of people here know, that I've experienced a lot of supernatural stuff. Like my whole family, not just me, not just my mom, but my aunts, my uncles, my grandmother. Like a really weird shit has happened. So like that stuff we can relate to. But this movie was sold on that premise. And especially like what you're saying, that, you know, the big reveal, that was so predictable. Like in the very beginning, it told you the very end of the movie. And I didn't like that. Like I felt like if they didn't have the very beginning and just started off where it started off, it would leave a lot more questions. Because the thing is that a lot of movies nowadays, just like the Christopher Nolan movie, where they reverse time, Tenet, like that, it carries you through the movie. It explains more to the movie, and it doesn't leave the audience enough to be like, hey, what's happening? Well, is this? Well, is it that? No, like just like how this movie did, is it showed you in the beginning, so now you know what to kind of expect. Like I completely get that whole like you know, evil superhero aspect, because that's what I kind of got in the very beginning of this, not so much the horror, because you had the James Gunn movie with the evil Superman. I forgot the name of that movie offhand.
Yeah, I know. With the kid,
Burn,
right? That was
Is it Burn something?
Burn, I think Brightburn.
Brightburn, that's it. Yeah, so you have Brightburn, and then you have the other one where it has the three teenage kids, that was done by the same director who did the most recent Fantastic Four movie. And
I love that movie. The one with Michael C. Hall, or not Michael C. Hall. What's his name? Michael B. Jordan. Sorry, there we go. One of the Michaels.
Is Michael B. Jordan in
the one with where they all get the superpowers and it's like found footage?
Yes, that one. Like you have
that was his first movie, I think.
Yeah, and see, like you have those, and it's done very well. But this movie, it sold you on one premise, but it completely was doing something else. Like very beginning, like you had all these like supernatural stuff going on, like telekinesis, first of all. And then in the continuation of it, it was a horror, but then ended up being like suspenseful, and then like a thriller.
Right.
And then at the very end, just exactly what you said, like a John Wick, like shoot 'em up, bang, bang. And I'm sorry, but this is a major spoiler alert. But if somebody has like a fetus growing on the back of their head, like Voldemort, and with the arms that's actually holding a gun, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm just done. Like, okay, I get the fact of, okay, you know, and again, spoiler if you haven't seen it, but you know, it's been on HBO Max for a little bit, so whatever. But I get the fact of, you know, they sliced and diced the fetus, right, and pushed the brain back into the head of the woman. But it would have been so much more impactful if you didn't see the fetus like come out of the skull and with his little hands.
Right.
Like it would have been more impactful to be more of a psychological aspect of that rather than seeing that happen.
Right, and then see clearly fake mask version of her glued to the back of this, actor's head while it's doing this backwards kung fu going through the jail.
Right, exactly. Like I had very high hopes for this. Like going in, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be scared because again, going from personal experiences, Conjuring scared me. Insidious scared me to the point because you still had that whole demonic aspect to it, right?
Yeah.
This movie, I was scared going into the beginning, but in the very beginning of the movie, I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of get what you are saying about like, the campy, Freddy Krueger and Jason. But at least back then, when they first aired, they were scary. They were frightening.
Yeah.
Where now, like, we can just be like, oh, that's a plastic face that's being torn open, like no big deal. Whereas like this is just no.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with today as well, if you think about it. I'm starting to wonder if like horror movies just aren't as good as they used to be, or if I'm desensitized because I've seen so many horror movies. You know what I mean? Like, It's like I've seen everything. Like we've seen everything now. We've seen like the torture porn horror, like Saw movies and Hostel and things like that. Where when those came out, those were freaking shocking, for us. Now it's just like it's a piss in the wind. It's something that you see all the time, and you've got the psychologicals and the ghost stories, and I remember I was in high school and like The Ring came out, and that scared the living hell out of me, man. And I remember walking out of the theater and I had like missed calls on my phone, and I was like, oh, I have missed calls on my cell phone, and just like stupid stuff like that. But like I don't know if it's just that I'm older now, or that the horror movies aren't what they used to be, or if I'm just desensitized by all the different kinds of horror movies I've seen in my lifetime. But, as you were saying, back then it was like Exorcist came out. Like people were passing out in the movie theaters and like leaving and screaming. And, Freddy Krueger came out. Same kind of thing. People were like absolutely shocked and horrified. And there's just Psycho, same kind of thing. And it's like now you could have like the craziest thing on screen and people are just like, eh.
Yeah, exactly. Like you had the slashers, right? The Scream, the Freddy Krueger. Then you had like the Blair Witch, like found footage, like that was big. I mean, Paranormal Activity. And then you had, like you said, the torture porn, like Saw and Hostel. And then you had movies like The Human Centipede, which was like big as well in its own right. And can't forget, of course, in the I think it was 70s, it was The Collector, that was based on a book that like a lot of serial killers like took to reality. Like that was big. And then you, of course, have The Conjuring now, but even like Annabelle movies. I'm sorry, but Annabelle Comes Home, like I was watching, I don't know if you saw it, but the sequence with the werewolf, like that reminded me of a rated R Goosebumps.
I was thinking the same thing, like a rated R Goosebumps or a rated R Jumanji or something like that. Or it's just
exactly
ridiculous. Night at the museum with horror.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know, man. But let's go ahead and let's forget about that movie, and let's jump back. And let's jump back about a decade or two and go to a year of our nostalgia, which is 1996. All right, so welcome to Back in Time in 1996. So as some of you already know, this is when Justin and I will go ahead and go over some of the biggest, of course, TV shows, cartoons, movies, toys that actually took place during that year. Unlike last week's episode where we actually had a list, an ideal list of, okay, number one was this, number two was this. Unfortunately, a lot of things that was research, it didn't give a list. It just became out of popularity or, the number of seasons, and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and let Justin, you, of course, wanted to go ahead and go with a run through first of the top TV shows, the top 5 TV shows of 1996. Of course, this list can be found on classic-tv.com. Take it away, Justin.
Yeah, and I was at an interesting age in 96 where most of these top 5s I was either too young for and had no interest in, or I was to the point where I've seen a couple episodes and I never really took off with them. There's one show out of the top 5 that I watch religiously. So the top 5 we have are ER, which, as we know, started George Clooney's career. Really took off from that. And that is one of the shows where I had no interest in as a 14-year-old kid at that point. Did not care about a Operation, ER drama at that age. Then we had Seinfeld. That was the one show for me that I watched religiously growing up. I don't know. Looking at some of the episodes now, I don't know if I should have been watching that show when I was 14 years old. But you really kind of look at like those characters, and they were just awful people, man. I think that was the point of the show, and I started to realize too. I'm a big fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and they draw a lot of parallels. I think they're awful people. It's a story about nothing with awful people. And it's basically, Sunny took off from that, I feel like. Then we have Suddenly Susan. That Brooke Shields, right? With that one?
I believe so. Like,
yeah.
I never really watched Suddenly Susan.
No, honestly. I wasn't a huge fan either. The only thing that reminds me of is Suddenly Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors. I love that movie. And then we got Friends. I'm going to go ahead and have a hot take here. Overrated show. I'm going to go ahead and say it. If Mark's watching this, our mutual friend, he's going to absolutely slam me for that. But again, there was some funny episodes and stuff like that. I guess, again, at 14-year-old me, like the more dramatic like relationship stuff didn't really like grab me.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, we have The Naked Truth. Again, I think that was Tia Leone in that one. And that's a show that never watched, never even heard of it. And that is The Naked Truth.
See, like a lot of those shows, though, like I know, of course, ER. Like growing up, I've seen like a few episodes, but this was after George Clooney. Like I know George Clooney from Entrapment. No. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Entrapment was not George Clooney. That was Sean Connery and what's her face, Catherine Zeta-Jones, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, like I know George Clooney mostly from like the Ocean's movie, which I mean doesn't date back that far either.
Right.
I know there's a lot of movies back in the day that I do know him from, but nothing's coming to the top of the head.
From Dusk Till Dawn is where he shined for me.
Yes, I will. With Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Yeah, which fun fact about that, apparently Quentin Tarantino, that was his, if I'm not mistaken, that was his first movie that he wrote. And from there, like, yeah, he's had cameos and stuff like in his movies, like Reservoir Dogs. He was like a short little snippet on that. But from my understanding is, I can't remember if he wanted to direct or if he was told not to direct. But that is a complete Quentin Tarantino movie. So yeah,
like, it's funny because he's in it. So from what I understand with that movie, Robert Rodriguez directed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Tarantino wrote the movie, but the you can tell where it splits from Quentin Tarantino directing that movie to Robert Rodriguez directing that movie. The whole front part of that movie where they like go and hold up the gas station and all that, that is all Quentin Tarantino directing that part. And then as soon as it goes, and that's a good example of a movie that goes from serious to kind of absolutely like bat crap crazy, in a moment's notice is From Dusk Till Dawn. But as soon as the vampires start coming out and stuff like that, that has Robert Rodriguez written all over it. So it's an interesting mix of the two.
Yeah, and like with Friends, like Suddenly Susan, I've never seen. The Naked Truth, I've never seen either. But Friends, I've seen a few more episodes. I will say, and a lot of people will disagree with me, but I am more of a How I Met Your Mother fan than I am a Friends fan. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? No, How I Met Your Mother ripped it off, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, I get that, but I can relate more to Ted than I can do like any of the other characters. Like I get the funny sequences of like, pivot, and
Yeah.
then smelly cat. Like those are great. And actually, during that time period, like it was very risque for like
Mhm.
television back in, because now when you look back on it, like you can see the episodes where it's like, oh wow, yeah, they actually pushed the envelope for like this specific circumstance. Like a great example, and I am so happy that we've grown past this, is like I'm sure back in the day where Ross his ex-wife is a lesbian,
Yeah.
and like back then, like growing up, like of course it could be the small town that I lived in, that that was very not heard of, but it's amazing to know that it went from mainstream like that to like where it is now, where just inclusion in general is always fantastic. So I could definitely see how that has helped shape not only culture wise but pop culture too, because like I'll go into box lunch specifically, and I will hardly find, if nothing, How I Met Your Mother, but I will find so many Friends things, and
Oh
it's
yeah, to this
just,
day.
yeah, exactly. To this day, like there's so many things, like Ross's ex-wife, the pivots to like a lot of things that has helped shape like culture today. To what I feel, a lot of people probably disagree, but in all honesty, though, it's like it's the whole thing of How I Met Your Mother. People complain that How I Met Your Mother ripped off of Friends. Okay, that might be true, but like at the same time, though, is like Friends is unique
Yeah.
and holds its own.
Yeah, I mean, find something these days that doesn't take influence from something else. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
it is what it is. I mean, that just gives more props to Friends, really. As much as I don't personally like the show, I still understand and totally support, the fact that it had a massive cultural influence.
Yes, exactly. And with influences, of course, comes to our next top five, which is the cartoons. And again, it's not the actual list as far as the money revenue to it. Unfortunately, with this, we had to go with the number of seasons, and the number of seasons that had the most was actually Arthur, which I've seen a couple of episodes, but not a lot. I remember Arthur and his friend the turtle. Number two was Blue's Clues. I mean, come on, everybody saw that video with Steve on Blue's Clues recently.
My biggest influence in music, I forgot to mention that.
The third one is Hey Arnold. Again, watch that a lot growing up. Dexter's
Yeah.
Laboratory, watched that a lot growing up. And surprisingly, I didn't actually watch this a lot, but Kablam was on there as well. And
That was surprising to me. That was something that I would catch while, by accident. I never like knew when it was on or, when it aired, but I would flip through Nickelodeon, and if it was on, I would watch it. And there was some, pretty cool variety, it's like a kid's variety show almost. But there was some cool stuff on it. It was just nothing that I ever like seek to watch, but I ended up watching it a couple of times.
yeah, see, like that surprised me too, because like I may have watched one episode and that's it, because it just never caught my eye. And of course, it could just be me, because like you said, like whenever it was on, you watched it. But like even so, with like the list itself, like Hey Arnold, I watched a lot.
Yeah,
Dexter's
same.
Laboratory, I watched a lot. And tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm not mistaken, between Dexter's Laboratory, there was a mini cartoon, wasn't it? Where it was like Justice Friends or whatever, where it had like the guitar guy with the long blonde hair, and then there's like two other friends, and they sat on a couch.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So like I remember Dexter's Laboratory with Dee Dee and like his arch
Yeah.
villain too, which was always fun. Hey Arnold, I always felt bad for Stoop Kid.
Yeah. Dude, that's such an adult cartoon. Like not adult in like the Rocko's Modern Life Ren and Stimpy way, but like adult as in like it's very like there's a lot of a deep meaning with Hey Arnold and deep episodes and like emotional episodes. Characters have like different kinds of like mental things going on in their lives, and all sorts of like issues. And it was like when you watch it now, it's a deep show for kids.
Yes, absolutely. Like it's one of those shows that you know, I could understand that a lot of parents not liking their kids to watch it because Helga was very rude. You had the bully that was very rude. I grew up in a very conservative household that's, I mean, hated the fact that I would sneakily watch Rocko's Modern Life. They gave a little leeway when I was like, all right, he's already watched half of it, might as well finish it. But like Ren and Stimpy, no, dude, like it was 5 minutes off.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
man, my dad and I used to watch that together, man. It's funny because like both my very conservative family here as well, but like I don't know, like it was different in my household where my dad and my mom too, like both have like really fun senses of humor, and not to say that your parents don't. I just mean like my parents are just like they don't care, man. Like they saw it as a cartoon, and we all watched it. And my dad and I would always just quote it, nonstop growing up. But I will say that if it was the Ren and Stimpy that was released on Spike TV later on in life, and I was a kid, and those new episodes came out, there is no possible way my parents would have let me watch that. I don't know if you ever saw those.
no. So do explain.
Okay, so I want to say at this point it was maybe a good 10 years ago at least, where the original animator, I forgot the guy's name that created Ren and Stimpy, he came out with new episodes of Ren and Stimpy. And it was on Spike TV. I don't even know if Spike TV still exists. Like it was the marketed as like the TV channel for men, Spike TV.
Right. Yeah.
And they picked up new Ren and Stimpy season, and I think it lasted like 4 episodes, and it got canceled. But there is some very like you think Ren and Stimpy back then was bad. Oh man, there's stuff I can't even mention on this podcast that went down in that. Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you haven't seen it, by all means, like you can watch the episodes on YouTube. I think they're censored on YouTube, so they have to be censored. That's
Wow.
They went way up there. Yeah.
Wow, that's something actually I didn't know because again, my family would just like shut it off, especially when it would focus on like nipples. Like what was it, like the Toastman's nipples or something like
It's
that?
magic nipples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stare into my magic nipples of the future.
Yeah, like that alone, it was like, nope, and off. Which I mean, again, in my household, my mom was like the very humorous one. My dad was like more like straightforward type guy. Perfect example would be like my dad didn't want me to collect Pokemon cards, though I still hid them like in my little closet, like just shut the door, look at my cards. And my mom was like, meh, who cares?
Yeah,
just cards.
I think my parents didn't want me to play Dungeons and Dragons growing up. It was like during that time of satanic panic kind of thing going on. Yeah, for some reason they thought like all parents thought like Dungeons and Dragons was like satanic games. And my parents were like, "You are not playing that."
Dungeons and Dragons, Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter was a big one. I remember growing up and then going into the bedroom, like the guest bedroom, and my mom was watching TV on the news, and like this lady was like, "Harry Potter is so satanic," blah 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 blah. It's like it's a book.
Like, yeah. A children's book at that.
Yeah, exactly. Like just that's the whole point of growing up and teaching your kids like what's make believe and what's fake and like what's real and what can happen and what can't happen. Like, I'm sorry, but I can't own a dragon. Like that's not gonna be a thing.
Right.
I can't be a Daenerys at all. So I mean, come on. Harry Potter is fictional. But I mean, we could talk about that all day.
Yeah. I've never seen somebody try to jump off a building on a broom.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's go ahead and jump to our top toys. This comes from the Toy Insider. Now, along with the major popularity of Lisa Frank and during the time of Space Jam, the good Space Jam, even though a lot of people hate me for saying that, the Michael Jordan, the good soundtrack, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Again, couldn't find the popularity, so I had to go with, couldn't find a list, so I had to go with overall popularity. And number one, which is not surprising during the time frame, was actually Tickle Me Elmo, which I never actually owned. It was major commercial selling points, and everybody wanted one. But I mean, I was at that point of not needing one, and I didn't want one. A foam and color Barbie. This is the second time. Of course, last week we had Barbie on the list, and this week we had Barbie again. So, I mean, that's not really surprising. Of course, we can talk about Barbie again, but I mean, last week we talked about, Barbie itself and the fact that, at one point you could take a baby out of the Barbie's stomach, which is a little controversial. But of course, number 3 was Buzz Lightyear, mainly because, I mean, the movie of Toy Story debuted on November 22nd, 1995. And of course, that's actually before, and a lot of people don't know this, but that was before Disney owned Pixar, because Disney didn't actually own Pixar until Cars. Just like how Disney didn't own Marvel until the Avengers movie came out. The Avengers movie is the only movie that the Disney actually had somewhat of hands in. And if I'm not mistaken, they were working on Avengers prior to when Disney bought out Marvel. So it's just one of those things. So yeah, I mean, Buzz Lightyear is number 3. Number 4 is my personal favorites and very nostalgic to me is Nintendo 64. And then the 5th and last is the Tamagotchi, which Nintendo 64, dude, watching those Nickelodeon shows like, what was it, GAC? And the one where like you would have somebody come on the show and describe their special ability or like special technique that they could do, and if they lost or if they won, then they get like a prize. Just a lot of those game shows. I remember growing up, and they would say, "Oh, you just won a Nintendo 64," and I'm like, "Oh no," because I wanted one so badly. Like I remember going to my cousin's Sean's place and my other cousin Peter and Robert and everyone's like house and stuff as a kid, and then playing like Pokemon Stadium was huge. I loved Pokemon Stadium, and then of course Mario 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, which by the way. That game is still going for $80, and that's just the cartridge. If you have the box itself, it's going for like over $300.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah, well, like during the time frame for Conker's Bad Fur Day, it was very similar to NWA, where that game was so hated on to the point where people were breaking it. Like they would just buy it to break it, to burn it, to do other stuff, because during that time, it was the most controversial game because of the language, because of the innuendos. I mean, the first boss you face is a giant piece of poo. Call him Mr. Pooh. This is one of those things.
Yeah. See, for me with the 64, I have fond memories of going to my friend Scott's house, ordering a pizza, listening to Life is Peachy by Korn, and playing GoldenEye on 64. Great nights.
Who was your character? Did you ever play Slapsies?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And the funny thing is too, like looking back, like back then, those graphics, you were like mind blown, absolutely mind blown. Where now, and everything used to be an event back in the day with Nintendo, where it was like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Wizard when they released Super Mario 3. From that, like it was about a kid that was like really good at Nintendo games, and he went across country to be part of like this Nintendo competition. And in that movie, they debuted the Power Glove for the first time and Mario 3. So Nintendo used to have these like, because they were, aside from Sega, they were like really the only system that mattered. And Sega was even debatable. It was up there, but it wasn't, Nintendo levels. But everything was such a huge celebration and like these big events. And when Nintendo had something new come out, and I had the Nintendo Power magazine that had all like, the maps when you open it up of all the levels, and man, good times.
Those were some great times. And in all honesty, I never actually owned a Nintendo 64 until like 2016, 2017, something like that. And I try not to get emotional in front of people. That's a thing. But like I always wanted a Nintendo 64 so bad that my cousins got it for me for Christmas. And when I opened it, it was just like the woman from Santa Claus 2, where she opens it up and she has that doll. Like the Nintendo 64 was the doll to me. Like it was just so happy.
You
Like,
mean
so
it wasn't
tearful.
it wasn't the weenie whistle to you? Your Oscar Mayer weenie whistle?
No, it's definitely not a weenie whistle. No. It's definitely like it was just so emotional attachment to
Yeah.
it, and it's funny that toys can do that, and that's the whole point of like the whole like going back of you know going back in the day, and that's the whole point of the show is the fact that we covered 1971 last week, we're covering 1996 this week. Like in the future, like every single episode is going to have a different year. It's not going to be falling in the same category. Like tomorrow's not going to be 95 or 97. No, it could be like 1963 or 2002. So that's the whole thing, and that's the whole point is just being able to bring up the nostalgia and talk about that, and being able to like communicate and see exactly what we can relate on and what memories that we have. And that's the beauty of it, and that's the beauty of being able to talk about Nintendo 64, being able to talk about Tamagotchi, and how long it took until like you found out like, oh, my creature died. Oops.
Yeah.
Oh wait, there's poop. I better clean that up too. Like that's the whole point. It's just to have fun too. So it's absolutely amazing. And not only that, but of course it brings us to our next segment of the movies too. And before we get to Sell Me a Movie, a lot of the top movies that actually came about during the time frame of '96 that a lot of people will remember is of course Space Jam. Love Space Jam. Jerry Maguire, which ironically I haven't seen yet, as big as a movie buff as I am. Jumanji with Robin Williams, and I absolutely love Robin Williams. Like Good Will Hunting, like when he died, he was definitely one of those ones that actually took to heart to me. Like went on a cruise with, oh, absolutely, man. Like when my wife and I went on a cruise to Portugal to where my grandmother's country and stuff like that, and they played the HBO documentary, and whenever it was on, like I would just stay in the room and just watch it. It was he was just a big impact. And then of course Kazam, showcasing Shaq, and not the mysterious movie of Shazam, which supposedly starring Sinbad, which never happened. Yeah. I'm sorry, but it just never happened.
No,
but number one was no. But number one was Independence Day for $306 million. And the next one was Twister for $241 million. The third one was Mission Impossible for $180 million. The Rock with Sean Connery was $134, and then the Nutty Professor of $128. And I know a lot of people will probably say, "Oh, Sean Connery sucks." Well, you know what? Fine. Share your Sean Connery moment because we would love to see that one too. But with that, of course, it brings us to our next topic, which is Sell Me a Movie.
Hello there, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and children.
Man, whoever's doing the soundtracks are nailing it tonight.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it kind of reminds me of a guy who has a album coming out. Something to do with an astronaut, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
So, as some of you don't know, Sell Me a Movie is basically what we do here is we take the top 5. So, for an example, if Lee was with us and he was with and there's the 3 of us, then the 3 of us would pick a movie, and we would try to sell that movie to you. With Justin and I, Justin has picked a movie. I have no idea what movie he's picked. Then I picked a movie. And he has no idea what movie I picked. Though through a strategic way, we found a way to, of course, make sure that we don't pick the same movie. And with that, we try to sell you that movie in about 3 minutes. And of course, you can leave a comment below to let us know which one sold the movie the best. Which movie would you prefer? Which one's on the list is better than the ones that we picked. Of course, it's up to your discretion, up to your opinion. So with that, of course, what we could do is we'll let Justin goes first. Real quickly, what we'll do is we'll make sure to get that window up. Okay, and Justin, let me know when you're ready, and I can restart it.
All right. Well, I apologize ahead of time. I have this actually written down as a script, and I'm going to do this in my best narrator voice.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and 3, 2, 1, and Justin, sell me your movie.
All right. A rekindled love story at its center. Bill Paxton and his new girlfriend arrive in Tornado Alley to get Paxton's divorce papers signed. He's a former storm chaser, a legend in his field. Wouldn't you know it, he decided to get his divorce papers signed right in the middle of the most active day of tornadoes in Earth's history. Meeting up with his soon-to-be ex-wife Jo, played by Helen Hunt, and his former storm chaser team, tornadoes begin to pop up all over the area. Throughout the movie, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt's characters start to rekindle their relationship, all while Bill Paxton's girlfriend is pushed more and more to the side until she finally gets tired of Bill's crap and leaves. Meanwhile, we have twin tornadoes, Carrie Elwes being stabbed by an electrical tower, a barn that had to be owned by Leatherface, houses falling from the sky, and of course, the finger of God itself. Will their love be rekindled? Will Philip Seymour Hoffman get less revealing pants? Does Carrie Elwes become Electro? And why did Joe's dad hang onto that cellar door when he could have just ran to his family in the corner of the cellar and survived like the rest of them? It's one of the biggest summer blockbusters of 1996 and a former classic ride at Universal Studios, which, by the way, was a show, not a ride. Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and a cutscene of his balls, evil Carrie Elwes, Cameron from Ferris Bueller Days Off, and a flying cow. Twister, in theaters, summer 1996.
No, you still have a minute though. Do you have anything else to try and help sell that movie?
Ah, man. Let's see. Aside from Philip Seymour Hoffman's balls that were cut from the movie. No, man, it was a fantastic movie. Like I am one of the rare few that think it still holds up to this day. I think that I mean, it's cheesy, but it's really good, man. It's still one of my go-tos to this day. Like if it's a rainy day outside and I want to watch something that I watched when I was a kid, there's two movies that I watched probably 4 times that year in theaters. Number one was Independence Day. And that was an event going to see that movie. And that was, I think, like the beginning of like a movie being an event and going to theaters. Mm-hmm. So Independence Day, and the other one was Twister. I saw Twister maybe 3 times in theaters. I went with my good friend Derek. I went with my parents. I had to like show everybody in my school. And it's a great movie, man. It's just a lot of fun, mindless fun, and had a great soundtrack as well with Van Halen.
Perfect. So with that, actually, a fun fact about Twister too is Twister was the very first movie to ever be on DVD.
Oh, wow. Did not know that.
Yep, I actually came across that information and knowledge, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to hold this knowledge to the rest of my life, for the rest of my life. It is the most useless knowledge, but
it's kind of cool. Fact. Because if you think about it, it's a movie about twisters, and the thing that's playing the movie is spinning real quick, and it's the first movie that ever had that. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, like I remember Twister, and I agree. Like, why did he hold on to that door? Like, there's.
I hate that scene, man. Even as a 14-year-old kid, I was like, why are you like they're safe? Why are you not running back there with the rest of them? And then he goes flying. You know, rumor has it he's still up there to this day, going in circles, lost and looking for his family.
With that cow, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch screens here. And then for those of you that don't know, I actually went with Mission Impossible this time, which is, Tom Cruise movie. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so again, I went with Mission Impossible. And the reason being is it's right there in the beginning, a very clear 90s intro with the iconic music of dun, 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 dun. Theme song along with still images of the movie to actually set you up for everything. Not only that, but it was during Tom Cruise's hype. Of course, it's different than any other Tom Cruise movie like Jerry Maguire or some of these earlier movies that he's done as well. Risky Business, Cocktails, completely different than any of those movies. Plus, you get the over-the-top yelling and googly eyes that you get from, of course, the typical Tom Cruise movie. I mean, The Mummy pretty much says it all. But also, a lot of people forget that Emilio Estevez was in it too. Though his death was very very memorable, especially as a young kid as myself. But still, regardless, though, like this is the biggest spy movie since 007. It's going on to, of course, gross upcoming 7 movies now, since it is in its 6th. And with that, millions of dollars. It was directed by Brian De Palma, who's done films such as the original Carrie, Scarface, and Black Dahlia. So you know that you're going in for a win. Also, we're also given like 2 iconic scenes too. I mean, who doesn't remember the fact of when Ethan, Tom Cruise's character, goes down to that computer to, of course, steal some information, and his buddy, of course, drops the rope. Right, he loosens the rope a little bit, and he almost falls flat on his face to the floor, almost signaling the alarm to go off. But yet, it's a single droplet of sweat that almost gives him away. So it's very high intensity to the point of like it gets you on the edge of the seat. But not only that, but I mean the helicopter scene at the end, where of course you have the main bad guy, which I mean it's been since 1996. So if you don't know already, spoiler alert, woohoo! Angelina Jolie's father is the villain, and of course it's the over-the-top action sequence where the helicopter explodes, and for some reason, even though Tom Cruise is like 5 feet away from the explosion, it does nothing to him except to push him back onto the train to make sure he's safe. But other than that, I mean, again, Mission Impossible, great 90s flick, great intro, as well as started a great franchise that Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' company, has actually picked up again. And that 7th movie is coming out, so I mean, why not go see a Mission Impossible movie, right?
Absolutely. Nicely done.
Voila. Right, you say it's nicely done, but at the same time, though, is we do leave it up to those to leave a comment to let us know who did the best of selling the movie. Are any of those movies the movies that you have yet to see, not seen, or planned on seeing, even though that those were done in 96? Because let's face it, Justin and I could have done, Independence Day, easy movie, Will Smith movie, completely easy to do. The Rock, another Sean Connery movie. Really haven't seen it, but we stick with what we like, right? Or I haven't seen it in a while, and that's the whole point. So of course, let us know who you believe has done the better job between the 2 movies, and what random year would you like to see us choose? Any random year at all, as long as it has toys, movies, 1930s, original Universal horror monsters, all the way up until like last week, because in a way that is kind of in the past, right? Also, if you are an independent movie director, we'd love to have you on the show too, talk to you just like how we did Justin as well, talked about your progress and what you have done. And Justin, before we actually head out, go ahead and give the people the last bit of information on where they can find your music, when they can find your music again, just all the information that they need.
Sure. So right now, best way to find me is on Facebook. On the search engine, just type in To the Stars We Return. You'll find my music page on there. You can find me on Bandcamp. That's tothestarsreturn.bandcamp.com. The link's going to be below. So click on that. That is the best way to stream my music right now. My old demos are on Apple Music and Spotify and all that, but it's under my actual name, Justin Dye, not this current project. So if you want to check out those old demos, you can too. Just look up Justin Dye on Apple Music and Spotify. However, my new stuff, I do have 1 single out on Bandcamp right now. So if you want to hear the full song, just go on over to that Bandcamp, click that link below, and check it out. Other than that, feel free to reach out to me on Messenger on Facebook and connect with me if you would like any kind of music done for your podcast or YouTube or anything that you're working on. I'm always happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, hey Justin, thank you again for coming on. I love you, brother. I love you guys. Everybody.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Love everyone who's actually participating in the show. And we look forward to seeing you guys again in the future. Knowing all that, hope you guys have a great night.
Thanks for tuning in.